Death is the ultimate barrier for all of us.
I carry a coin that just says Memento Mori, which is Latin. It means remember your death. Memento Mori to me puts everything in perspective. As Marcus Aurelius says, it shows you what's essential and what's inessential. Want to take a sharp right turn and talk You're Gonna Die, Memento Mori?
100%. Go
I think I carry in my pocket every day, I carry a coin that just says Memento Mori, which is Latin. It means remember your death, right? And on the back, there's a quote from Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic, and he wrote to himself, he said, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. So this could be the last show I'm on in my life. This could be the last city I'm on in my life. This could be the last book I ever write. You know, the last time I talked to my wife. The thought of your mortality and death, and not in a depressing way, should shadow everything that you do, because it's the only way to make sure you do it right.
Boy, do I talk about death a lot, right? Right?
It's up there.
Yeah, the funeral, like,
oh yeah, sure.
I believe in it the most, as you can probably know a little bit. Like, I'm glad you brought that up.
No, your 3 words, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
That should let you cut out bullshit. That should let you decide how you're gonna treat other people and let yourself be treated. And it should determine the quality of the work that you're gonna do.
This happens to everybody in a micro. It's called when police lights go on behind you, you're scared shitless, you change your behavior, then the car drives by you, right? And then for like 3 minutes, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go 55 now. And then, 4 minutes later, you're going 73 again.
Right.
And that's how I think people do it in life. Like, something bad happens, they hear something, they see something, and they're like, oh shit, I'm gonna live under the mindset of you're gonna die. Like, yeah, they've seen my thing, it hit them for a day.
Well, it's like you hear about a friend who has cancer and you think like, what would I do if I had cancer?
Yeah.
I'd blah, blah. You do have cancer. You're gonna fucking die.
Yes,
you do have cancer. You just don't. First off, because lots of people do get cancer, so there's a real chance the cells are already in your body, right?
Yep.
But like, you do have a fatal diagnosis from a doctor. He just can't tell you if it's 6 months or 60 years. But you are definitely 100% going to die, and it could be tomorrow. So what are you gonna do with that information? My friend emailed me on a Friday. I told myself I was gonna respond on Monday, and by Sunday, he was gone. He'd fallen dead of a heart attack. And this is why the Stoics practice Memento Mori. Life is short, you can go at any moment. But also they said, the people who are precious to you, you do not possess them. You can't take them for granted. You can't assume they're gonna be here forever. You can't assume you're always going to have them. You don't have them now. They're here on loan. They are here under shaky status at best. So you can't take people for granted. You can't take time for granted. You can't go to bed angry, as they say. You can't hold on to grudges. Like, be with them now while you can. Forgive them now while you can. Appreciate them now while you can. Enjoy them now while you can. That's the only thing we can do. Memento Mori, you could leave life right now, as Marcus says, but also they could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, particularly with the people who matter most to you. One of the most withering lines from Seneca, he says, you're afraid of dying, but how is the way that you're living any different from being dead? And I think his point is that we go around, we have this anxiety about death. We don't want to die, we want to stay alive. But if we actually looked at our life, I mean, you're afraid of dying because you're gonna miss out on all these Netflix shows. Like, you're afraid of dying because you're not gonna get to spend all that time in traffic anymore. And Marcus Aurelius, he said something really similar. He said, you're afraid of dying because you can't do this anymore. And it's the same idea. Like, we waste so much time. So much of life is absurd and lame and ridiculous. And we're really just like burning the days. We're almost like prisoners. We're just watching the second hand on the wall just tick away until we are freed by death. And so the idea isn't depressing. It's not saying that life is meaningless and that you should kill yourself. It's saying the opposite. It's saying that life is super meaningful and you're an idiot if you waste a single second of it. I mean, that's sort of the idea of the Memento Mori coin that we've made and that all these people carry with them now. It's like, look, you will die. It's a fact of existence, and you could leave life at any moment. So let's make sure that you make the most of this moment. That's the idea. The other, I think, badass line from Seneca, he says, you act like mortals in all that you fear and immortals in all that you desire. So we go around and we're afraid of shit. We're afraid of heights. We're afraid of getting hit by a bus. We're afraid of being mugged. We're afraid of dying in an accident. And yet when we think about like all the money that we're trying to earn and all the fame that we want and all the pleasures that we want to have, we're acting as if this is going to go on forever and that we need as much of it as humanly possible and that we need to defer the present moment so we can have more in the future. But the truth is we are mortal and that the future is not a given. And so why don't we just find, the Aristotelian mean, some midpoint between the two? Why don't we think about that? Why don't we just think about letting this moment that we're in be enough, not having fear, not having desire, just having sort of gratitude and appreciation and presence for what we have in front of us. I mean, to me, that's the way to do it.
This is actually a really important final Stoic concept. I carry a coin in my pocket. It says Memento Mori. And on the back has a quote from Marcus Aurelius. He says, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." To me, this is the ultimate way to cut obstacles down to size, to put things in perspective, to be grateful instead of resentful, to be excited instead of bitter or resigned. It's like, I'm alive. That's pretty good, right? And to waste our time resenting, to waste our time hurling ourselves against a wall that's never going to change and always will be thus, is to waste this precious gift, our existence, the present moment. And the Stoics advise us not to do that. Seneca says we should prepare each day, every minute, as if we're coming to the end of life. He said, leave your books in good shape, right? I'm sure there's some accountants in the room. Balance the books of life each day. Put the finishing touches on your life. Don't leave anything hanging. Don't put anything off. Do it now, because now is now. Seneca says, don't think of death as this thing in the future that may or may not happen, that you're moving slowly towards, that hopefully you've got many years left towards. He says, actually, death is now. Death is the ticking second hand on your watch. He says the time that passes belongs to death. You never get it back. So time then is our most precious resource. We have to figure out how to spend it wisely. We have to figure out how not to waste it. We have to figure out how to enjoy it, even amidst the obstacles and difficulties. And any idea that things are going back to normal, that they'll go back to the old way that they were, it's just not how things work, or that you'll just wait it out. No, now is now, and the time that you waste, the things that you put off, problems you don't tackle that you hope will resolve themselves, what you're wasting is life.
It was an ordinary regular season game against a team that he'd played dozens of times over the course of his career. Chris Bosh didn't know in the locker room as he was lacing up his shoes that it would not just be the last time he played the Spurs, but be the last time he played professionally as an athlete. An embolism in his leg would end his playing career suddenly, anticlimactically, tragically. When the Stoics talk about Memento Mori, that life is short, it's not just the idea that we could go at any moment, which we can. It's that the things we care about, the things we love, the things we're doing, we are not in control of them. We don't control when they begin or end. And so the reason the Stoics talk about being present, about not taking things for granted, about not deferring things into the future, it's for that reason. Because you don't know when your career is going to end. You don't know when your knee is going to blow out. You don't know how long you get to do things. And so to take them for granted, to assume they'll always be there, to not give your best, is arrogant. It's reckless. It's selfish. It's short-sighted, and you can't do it. You had like a real up-close reminder of this idea of Memento Mori. Like,
it's
life
over.
is short.
Yeah.
You could go at any moment, and now you got to figure out, you still have this gift of time, but you don't know how long you're here for.
Me and my wife, she's challenged me, being a basketball player, having schedules, which you have to have a schedule, I believe, and do all these things. But she's given a challenge to me which I've accepted months ago, was to be more present, stay in the moment a lot more.
Sure.
Even if I'm at my desk writing or making voice memos or trying to produce some music or get emails out or read these things that I need to read.
Sure.
When it's time to go with the kids, I put it up and it's time to go with the kids.
Right.
If I'm walking back to the office and I see my wife sitting by the pool and, she's answering some emails too, hey babe, let's come out and have lunch.
Right.
All right, cool. I used to be in a point where I'm like, no, I have to go back here. And I've got to go back to the thing. I'm working on, just being more in the moment and appreciating those things. And it's crazy. My work has gotten a lot better. It's been insane.
Well, I struggle with that. I struggle with that too, right? Because to get good at what you do, you have to be driven and you have to be self-driven,
Yeah.
right? Like you don't become great because the coach wants it for you. You have to want it more than the coach wants it. But then it's really hard to turn that off. So yeah, it's like like I like to get up early and I like to get to work, but then it's like, you know, it's 8:03 and I'm like a jerk because I got to get here. And it's like, who's watching? You know, like
Right.
if I got there at 8:15, just stay 15 minutes later, you know,
Yeah.
like get the work done.
Yeah.
But like you're rejecting this present moment, which could be 5 minutes with your kids, could be a nice conversation with your wife, could just be watching the sunset or the
sure.
sunrise.
For sure.
But I think what I realize about the Stoics are saying like, where are you rushing towards? You're rushing towards death.
Right,
like,
for sure.
You're trying to get this over
You'll be
with.
hurrying and then hit the bump and then, heaven forbid, you know?
Well, but also it's like, once you get it all done, what happens? Like,
Yeah.
so you finish this, you finish this, you finish this. What's the last thing that happens? You
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
So why rush? Like, you should be present. You should show up. You should experience it because you only get to do it once. And it's almost arrogant to try to get this thing over with so you could do this thing. Like when I
Right.
put my kids down, I go like, you know, it's like taking too long. You know, they never want to go to bed. I'm like, what am I going to do?
Right.
What am I going to do when you go to bed? Right?
Right.
Like answer email, watch TV,
Right, there's
snack,
some stuff,
you know,
yeah.
like nothing. I'm not going to do anything that's more important than this thing.
Yeah, and I kind of have that same mentality, you know, where we've learned to coexist in the house a lot of the times.
You don't have to travel 42 nights a year.
Yeah, you know, so I'm going to have my child coming in while I'm trying to do my work and say, Dad, come here, you got to see this. Dad, let me show you something.
Yeah.
Let me show you something. And I'm going to have to walk across the yard because they want me to show me something. And it used
Cool
to be
stick,
like,
man.
oh, no,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? No. But now it's like, all right, cool, yeah, come on. But just having that moment for them to say, wow, they don't care about
Yes.
all that stuff. What is important to them is that, hey, Dad came with me to look at my stick.
Yeah.
Look at my pet rock, Dad. Like, oh, it's crazy, bro. You know, it's just,
Right.
but having those moments and staying present with that, you know, it's definitely given me more of an appreciation for things and how they happen.
Yeah.
Because this definitely is a great metaphor in that conclusion of saying, okay, man, and I've had my peers, a few of them gone.
Yeah.
You know, so let me make sure I'm enjoying today. Let me make sure if I'm working on something, I'm working on something I want to work on.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not being a mean person. And even if it's a rough day, man, come on, kids, let's go for some ice cream or something, or go for a walk or something. But just to do something or be open to the flow taking you somewhere else.
That was one of the most beautiful things I read in an article about Kobe. A couple days before he died, some reporter was like, hey, I want to interview you for this like 20-year anniversary, some big ESPN piece. And they texted him, he just texted back, nah, I got my girls.
Yeah.
You know, like, and
Yeah.
he didn't know that he only had them for 3 more days.
Right,
But
right.
like, and how long could that interview have taken? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? But
Yeah, doesn't
that's
matter.
everything.
Yeah,
That's
doesn't matter.
everything.
Because he knows, like, I'm going to get in Mamba mode and I'll be over here. No. My girls. And, you know, my kids are very much the same as well. They're like, hey, Dad, what are you doing? Another interview. You know.
Yeah.
They want to watch cartoons or, you know, we have gardening bees now and stuff.
You raising bees?
Yeah, we
Ooh.
got some bees, man. They want to go see those things. They want to, you know, get their hands dirty and have experiences and activities. And this, you know, through that, I've gotten to live through them and with them and say,
Yeah.
wow, oh man, look at all this stuff. It's so cool just to smell the dirt and the air and stuff. You know, that's a great thing to be present for.
There's a haunting story about Montaigne. In 1569, he's thrown from a horse and it nearly kills him. And as his friends lift his lifeless body up the ground and carry him home to die, he says he can feel life dancing on the tip of his lips. And he realizes when he does miraculously survive this, just how tenuous our connection with life is, how we have to embrace it, how we have to seize it, how we can't take anything for granted. And this is the old philosophical idea of memento mori. I carry this coin in my pocket. Marcus Aurelius, his quote on the back, he says, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." You can't take life for granted. You can't assume you have a firm grasp on life because it could slip from your fingers at any moment. And that's what Memento Mori is about. Why did you give the most valuable real estate in your book to death?
Well, death is the ultimate barrier for all of us, not just physically, but psychologically. I maintain that human beings are messed up, screwed up in so many ways because of their awareness of death and their fear of death. It is through this fear that we created all kinds of superstitions, that we created the idea of an afterlife. You're enslaved by this fear. You're not aware of it. It's controlling you. Overcoming it is the ultimate freedom. Most people are going to say, oh, that's not me, as they say for all of these chapters.
Other people, they're irrational, not me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not really afraid of death. I play video games and I'm always killing people, and I watch movies and people are always dying. I'm not afraid of that. Our culture was permeated with cartoon versions of death. Your death is something physical. It's going to happen to you. It's a very visceral thing. You are afraid of it. And that fear creates what I call latent anxiety. It makes you fearful of a lot of things in life and you're not aware of it. It makes you cautious about failure. It makes you cautious about taking risks. So I'm trying to show you that your fear of death has infected you on many, many levels. And so I compare it to this. I use the metaphor in the book. I don't use many metaphors, but this is one I use, is that death is like this vast ocean that we stand on the shore of. Most animals are not aware of their mortality. We are the only species, as far as we know, that's aware of its mortality. And here you are on the shore of this immense, vast ocean. You don't know what death is or what it's going to be, and you're afraid of it, and you turn your back to it. And we humans have the ability to explore things, to conquer our fear. And I want you, instead of turning your back, to actually enter that vast ocean and explore it. And I show you ways of exploring the actual thought of your own mortality and how it can free you and inspire you in many ways.
You're afraid of death. Most of us are. But Marcus Aurelius says, are you afraid of death because you won't be able to do this anymore? Watch stupid videos like this on the internet, scroll on your phone, wait in a waiting room, wait for your flight to board, wait for your job. We fear death, and yet we waste so much time in our lives with things that don't matter. And so much of life is frustrating and annoying and pointless. So one, don't cling to life as if it's this magical thing, because for most of us, it isn't a magical thing. But I think what the Stoics are really saying is focus on what does really matter, on what you actually control, on the life that you have. Seneca says, don't think of death as something in the future, something to fear. Think of it as something that's happening right now. You're afraid of death because you might die in the future, but in reality, you're dying right now as your life is happening, wasting it on TikTok or Instagram or email or fighting with someone about some nonsense, right? You're afraid of death because you won't do that anymore. How about you just stop doing that and you magically get more life right now? Going back to Cicero, Cicero says that to philosophize is to learn how to die. That's what we're all doing. We're all, over the course of a life, learning how to do the one thing that we all have to do, the one thing that all humans have shared for all time. And yeah, it seems like, in a sense, by allowing you in, and the real gift that your father gave you all, and then, gives the readers by opening up to a writer, is that he allowed you to experience and struggle with the struggle that we all have, which is being afraid.
Yes. And I mean, that's the through line of the book, while in part being like life lessons that were taught through the game, and then life lessons in that last year of his life as he's in the final year with ALS. I'm trying to show a portrait of an athlete, which is a different mentality than other mentalities. It's very much a portrait of an athlete, like you said, working through the mindset of who he wants to be and how he's going to, one, accept death and then approach death. And for much of the book and the story, he is unwilling to do so because he sees it, one, as, I think he sees it as failure to some degree, that he's giving up.
Yeah.
And then of course,
losing.
It's losing. It's definitely in his mind for much of the book, losing. And then there's just fear on a very primal base instinct of fear.
Sure.
And it's not until the very, very end that he starts to realize that surrender is what he needs to do. But the complicated thing about, the book is that by the time he realizes this, he has completely lost his voice. So there's this section of time where I'm almost desperate to know what it's like for him, because aren't we all just so curious of
Sure.
when someone is finally looking at death and has come to philosophize to the point that they are accepting that death is going to happen. I want to know why and how and what that feels like. But he couldn't talk anymore. And so was trying to piece together small things that he was doing and ways in which he was communicating by blinking and trying to in my own mind as the writer of this story, piece together what he must be feeling and thinking and what it all means.
What do you learn from like how he lays there and how he holds his head up and uses his eyes? What do you feel like he communicated with you about the hardest thing that we all have to do?
The very unique way in which he died was that we decided to take him off his ventilator, his tracheostomy. But we had about 48 to 72 hours before the hospital was willing to transfer us and make this happen and have all the paperwork done. So it was almost like, I mean, in a way, he's almost like a death row, right? He knows when this is going to happen, but we can't do it yet. So he has this chunk of time. And it was really interesting to me, the things he was bringing up, because even though he couldn't talk, he could mouth something and we could try to read his lips, or we had a system where he could, left eye was yes, right eye was no. And the night before we transferred him to the ICU to start the morphine drip, which would end his life, he was really forceful about translating this one sentence. And when I finally got it translated, the sentence was the fight outside CVS. And it was this fight that my dad and I had 15 years prior in Rhode Island. And it was the biggest fight we'd ever had outside of a CVS. And it was about a stupid thing. Doesn't matter now, but like we'd really gotten into it. And it was really compelling to me to see that the point that he brought this up, the second I said, the fight outside CVS, he blinks his eye, yes, yes, yes. And then he mouthed, I'm so sorry. And I was like, we all think that at the end of life, we're going to be like reminiscing about the weddings and the vacations and deaths of other people. But like, that was something that had given our relationship like texture. It was this thing. And that's what he was thinking about in these final hours, was like moments in his life that maybe he hadn't communicated properly, and he wanted to go back and just make sure I knew, as I kept forward in life, that I knew that he too wanted more from our relationship and that he too had made mistakes. And so it was very compelling to me, not that it's not common sense that we want to reconcile all of these things, but that very specific thing we'd never talked about since the day it had happened until the day before he died.
Well, and obviously I didn't know your father, so this might not be what he was trying to say, but I think the other part of that is, we think, and we say this, like when you were thinking about leaving ESPN, we go like, am I going to regret doing this or not chasing my passion? Am I going to regret not going to this opportunity to do X, Y, and Z? We think we're going to regret things that have to do with like pleasures that we didn't take, or roads that we didn't take, or things that we didn't do. But in reality, I think what we end up regretting is the times we lost our temper about things that didn't matter. We regret the way we treated people that we cared about, and the way we treated them wasn't a reflection of what we actually felt about him. So I wonder if what your dad didn't want that thing, which is so meaningless in retrospect, to mean anything years later. You know what? Like he didn't want that to go unaddressed because it didn't matter, but at the same time it mattered so much.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely spot on, because it was the last thing I remember. It was the last element of our relationship that had been conflict that we hadn't talked about since he'd gotten sick. Like there had been other mistakes I'd made, decisions I'd made that we hadn't talked about, that over the last years of his life, I brought up or he brought up, and we talked through, and we both got into this place where we're like, that's done. That no more holds any power in how I think about you or how I think about our relationship. But the fight outside CVS had gone unaddressed.
Yes.
And it was still, I assume, this thorn in his mind about, okay, well, we talked about this thing, we talked about that thing, I regret that. And we had gotten it all out except this one thing. And you're completely right in that it was such a fascinating case study of like those last 48, 72 hours, like the things we were talking about.
Yeah.
It was just reliving memories, reliving stories, and making sure any thorn that had existed got pulled out. And it was all relationship, always.
Like I think about like with my wife, like let's say I was to list like the 15 biggest fights that we've ever had. I don't think there's a single one that I'm like, I would still die on that hill.
right? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
none of them matter in retrospect, right? And so we get so worked up about things, and then it becomes this sort of feedback loop, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you're having a fight outside CVS, and 15 years later, it remains unaddressed, you know?
Yeah,
And I think death
yeah.
puts all those things in perspective.
Yep. And that was what we were watching him do, was putting everything in perspective.
The greatest honor that a Roman could receive was a triumph through Rome. You would march victorious, coming home from the battlefield. You'd be led on a chariot. But yet they also had a servant follow close behind who whispered in your ear, Memento Mori, meaning you are mortal. They wanted someone at their greatest moment of triumph. They wanted them to be reminded that they were still a human, that life was short. I actually carry this coin in my pocket. It says Memento Mori, and on the back it has a quote from Marcus Aurelius, that you could leave life right now, he says, let that determine what you do, say, and think. In today's video, I wanted to talk about the concept of Memento Mori in as short a time as possible to give you what I think is one of the most life-changing exercises in all of Stoic philosophy. Again, in the ancient world, life was very fragile, and yet even then they had to remind themselves that they could go at any moment. And I think death, as we have become successful as a society, as we become more and more insulated from tragedy, has receded from the forefront of our consciousness. Shakespeare famously said that every third thought after he retired would be of his grave. I don't know if it has to be that often, but at least once a day, just take a minute to think, I don't know how much time I have left. As Seneca says, we go through life afraid of some things as if we're mortal, but then we treat time as if we are immortal, as if we have an unlimited amount of it, and we don't. The tragedy is, by the time we realize we've been taking time for granted, it's too late. One of the most life-changing exercises as far as Memento Mori goes for me came from Seneca. Seneca says, don't see death as something in the future that you're moving towards. He said, see it as something that's happening right now. He says, you're dying every minute. You are dying every day. He says, the time that passes belongs to death. So I don't think about the fact that I'm 34 and that means per actuary tables I've got 45 years left. I think instead that I've died 34 years. I've died however many minutes I've spent talking to you. So why am I doing it? Because this is important to me. If it wasn't important to me, I shouldn't do it, right? Since I am doing it, I should do it as if it matters. I should give it my best. Memento Mori to me puts everything in perspective. As Marcus Aurelius says, it shows you what's essential and what's inessential. He has this great test. Marcus says, ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I won't be able to do blank anymore? And I think about that, the things that we spend so much time doing, then we wonder, where does our time go, right? We spent it on frivolous, stupid things. So for the Stoics, Memento Mori was this humbling bit of perspective. It put everything in sharp focus. And I think even one of the most haunting exercises in Stoicism about Memento Mori, it doesn't just apply to you, but also the people you love. Marcus Aurelius says, as you tuck your child into bed at night, say to yourself, they may not make it to the morning. Is that supposed to be detaching you from not feeling what you feel towards them? It's the opposite. It's telling you, don't rush through this, because what you're rushing towards is death. Slow down, be present, cherish the person while you have them. It's not that life is short, Seneca says. It's that we waste a lot of it. The practice of Memento Mori, the meditation on death, is one of the most powerful and eye-opening things that there is. We built this Memento Mori calendar for Daily Stoic to illustrate that exact idea, that your life, in the best case scenario, is 4,000 weeks. Are you gonna let those weeks slip by, or are you going to seize them? The act of unrolling this calendar, putting it on your wall, and every single week, that bubble is filled in, that black mark is marking it off forever. Have something to show, not just for your years, but for every single dot that you filled in, that you really lived that week. You made something of it. You can check it out at dailystoic.com/mmcalendar.
This is the most powerful part of Memento Mori. Seneca says that the person who has gone to bed doing everything that they could have done that day, when you awake in the morning, if you are so lucky, it's a bonus. You're happy in the morning because you've been given an extra try. You're playing with house money. And so if I can leave you with this idea of Memento Mori, I think it'll make you better. And that's why I carry this reminder with me. It's powerful. Use it wisely. This is the Daily Stoic coin. I'm as proud of making this as I am of any of my books. Tens of thousands of people all over the world have them. I see them and they bring it out of their pocket. They say, look at this every single day. It's changed my life. I hope it'll do the same for you. You can check it out at store.dailystoic.com. Seneca says that you can't buy more life, but you can acquire fearlessness. You can stop being afraid of death. And when you cease to be afraid of death, when you stop worrying about what looms way off in the future, what you get is right now. You get the present moment. So the Stoics think about this exercise of Memento Mori. They meditate on their mortality. They envision their own death. They plan for their own death. They practice for their own death so that it ceases to waste their time, to waste their energy. It ceases to intimidate them, and they can give themselves the gift of the present moment right now. And you can do that. Don't be afraid. Get yourself some fearlessness. Don't worry about death. While you're here, Epictetus says, death is not here. And when death is here, he says, you are not here. And so we think about death because it empowers us now here in life. And that's what Memento Mori is ultimately about.
How many people sort of realize that life is short after they've already wasted so much of their life, right? We talk about this, like somebody gets cancer and they go, that's when I realized I was going to die. And it's like, you knew from birth you were going to die. It's not like this is up for debate, right? Like every person that's ever born, it knows they're going to die, but then we deny that fact. I'm going to send you guys one of these Memento Mori things that I do for Daily Stoic. Do you know that expression, or do you have one?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Amazing. To me, what I love about Memento Mori, on the back, Marcus says, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. I think about that, but I actually really love Seneca. Seneca says, it's wrong to think of death in the future. So you go okay, I'm going to die at 100. So I have, how much life do I have left, right? That you're moving towards death. He says no, the time that passes belongs to death. So the way to think about it is that you guys have already died a quarter of your life, right? You've died 25 years. He says the time that passes belongs to death. He says we're dying every day, every minute. And I think when you think about it that way, that everything you spend time on, you're paying for with life is a fundamentally different way to go through the world. Because then when someone tries to guilt you into doing something that doesn't need to be done, or as you said, when you're wasting time being anxious about something, dreading something that's happening, or even just think during the pandemic, when this first happened, that people are like, 2 weeks, I'll wait it out. And then life's going to go back to normal in June. I'll just wait until June. And it's well, here we are 13 months later, and you're still waiting it out. This could have been the best year of your life. And for me, in a lot of ways, it was one of the best years of my life, not in the way that I thought, but in terms of the amount of time that I spent with my kids, in terms of the writing that I got done. I didn't travel to Finland like I was supposed to, but I did go on a road trip across the United States. You have to adjust and be flexible, but you really can live every minute if you choose to.
Definitely. Self-perception, for sure.
I think it's really, really interesting to just think of the fact that you die as a good thing, because I've been talking about this a lot this last year, because death has been such in the forefront.
It's in the air. It's literally floating in the air. You could catch it at any moment.
Exactly. And I take that with a grain of salt, but because that reason, the fact that we die is what makes everything meaningful. It's the second today, or the relationship I make tomorrow, or the occurrence that I have next week is only meaningful because I die. If I was immortal, I could do that a million times and it wouldn't mean as much. Our conversation right now wouldn't mean as much, but we are having this in the limited time that we have. And now we are 1 hour, I guess, closer to death, which means that it's valuable. These conversations, these relationships, these experiences are valuable because we have that limited time to offer.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I think sometimes people
miss the idea of memento mori. So memento mori is not like you're going to die, everything's meaningless, like go have an orgy or go try heroin, right? It's not, to me, it's not like nothing matters, anarchy, because it's not for sure that the world is going to end tomorrow. Right? Like if the world was going to end tomorrow, if you for sure knew everything was being wiped off the planet, that would sort of throw everything into a state of flux. For the Stoics, I think it's that life could end tomorrow. So you don't know, but it could. So how do you live in a way that leaves no regrets, but also doesn't create regrets when you happen to be alive tomorrow? So it's really, I think, just about, as you said, making every minute count. So I think about it's like, this could be the last email that I sent. It's not life is meaningless, so I'm not going to send the email. It's I'm going to actually be here as I write the email, or have this conversation with you, or even like eating a sandwich. This could be the last sandwich I eat. I'm not going to rush through it to get to the other side, because the other side could be death. I'm going to actually show up, even if it's something as banal as eating a sandwich.
Marcus Aurelius says, don't live as if you had endless years ahead of you. He says, death shadows over you. Death looms over you while you're living and able. He says, do good, right? The present is all we have, the Stoics say. What's happened is happened. We can never do that again. The future is uncertain. It is unknown. But the present, this moment you're spending on your phone, this moment is all you have for certain. Put the phone down, put your anxiety away, let your regrets go, and focus on how you can use this moment. While you're good and able, Marcus Aurelius says, be good. While you're alive, live. Memento Mori, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That's the essence of the Stoic way.
There's two words that come to us from the ancients that I think we should remind ourselves of, repeat to ourselves in any and every situation we're in. You win the lottery, you strike it rich, you get recognized, you get an award, you say to yourself, Memento Mori, remember you will die. You go through shit, you go through trouble. Someone cheats on you, someone betrays you, someone lies to you, someone steals from you. Someone gets what you earned. Someone gets promoted over you. You say to yourself, Memento Mori, remember that I will die. You could leave life right now, Marcus Aurelius said. Let that determine what you do and say and think. You get in a fight with your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Your parents say something mean or let you down. Your neighbor pisses you off. You break your leg. You blow out your knee. You fall out of love with someone. You're stressed out by work, your kids are sick. You say to yourself, Memento Mori, life is short, I'm going to die. And what that means is you can't take any of this seriously. You can't let it weigh on you. You can't hold on to it. You can't let it puff you up either. If you're rich, if you're famous, you have 1 million Instagram followers, you just got hired, you just got into Harvard, you just got nominated for a Nobel Prize, you just got a call from the president, you just got a promotion, you just got a raise. Memento Mori, you will die. You can't take any of this with you. It pales in comparison to the idea of eternity. How many people have come before you and had these same honors, and where are they now? They're fucking dead, just like you will be. What Marcus Aurelius said is this practice of Memento Mori, of saying to the good things and to the bad things in life that we will die. It's a reminder that helps you accept the good things without arrogance and to let the bad things go with indifference. Your plane is delayed, you're stressed, you're tired, you're hungry, you're frustrated, you're cynical. You say, Memento Mori, I'm going to die. What does any of this mean? Why am I taking any of it so seriously? Why am I letting it get to me? What's 3 hours here or 3 hours there? Remember, you are going to die. What you do control is whether you waste time getting upset by this, whether you waste time taking it personally, whether you're the best in the world at what you do, or you're an unpaid intern, whether your work is being beloved by the critics or savaged by the critics, whether you have more opportunities than you know what to do with, whether you can't get the one shot, no one will even give you a chance, whether you have all the money you need or you can barely get by. You say, Memento Mori, remember I will die. None of this matters in light of that. Whether you're having sex with a beautiful supermodel, whether you're putting your kid down to bed, whether you're sitting there in your pajamas eating cereal, or you are standing in front of a prestigious audience, Memento Mori, you will die. Is this how you want to spend your time? Are you wasting it, or are you living it? Are you embracing it, or are you letting it escape from your grasp? Memento Mori, remember, I will die. You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do and say and think. Whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're going through, however awesome your life is, however frustrating it is right now, Memento Mori, remember, you will die. This too shall pass. You must not forget that. Hey, it's Ryan Holiday. Thank you so much for supporting Daily Stoic. It means a lot, and it helps us when you like and subscribe and comment on our videos. When you follow us on social media, we're at Daily Stoic on pretty much every platform. You can also check out dailystoic.com/store. That's how we keep these videos high quality and ad-free. If you want to support us, buy one of our awesome philosophically inspired products. Thank you for all the support. So the Memento Mori thing has been like of an unexpected vein, because for myself too.
Explain to people what that is.
So Memento Mori is this idea. It just means remember death or remember your immortality. And I think it's probably, it's not only one of the most powerful themes in all of ancient philosophy, specifically Stoicism, but in basically all of ancient art as well. Like the most beautiful painters used to paint pictures of skulls and dancing skeletons and or decaying bodies, and so this imagery of the inevitable decay, the entropy of life, is this timeless theme that basically goes all the way up to modern art, and then it's just like weird ass shapes and stuff. So we stopped using art as a tool to remind us of human primal things and started using it as a status symbol. You know what I mean? And so what the Stoics are, so much of meditations and Seneca's writing is just talking about how easy it is to forget that you'll die, or to have the wrong attitude about death. One of my favorite things from Seneca, he goes like, do not think that you're moving towards death. He was like, every second that passes is death. So don't think about it as like, oh, I'm dying in the future and I should be prepared for that. Think about the fact that we're dying every day. That you're just...
Why is that better?
It's just a reminder. It's not like death is this thing in the future, so I'm going to dick around today. It's that like that hour that I spent on the couch, I died 1 hour of my death. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And his point is that so many people think that there's life and death, but there are ways of living that are essentially a form of being dead. And that this is in fact how most people die, or most people live. There's this sort of haunting, messed up story in Seneca. One of the emperors is sort of like walking down this row of condemned prisoners, and the prisoner is pleading for his life, please don't kill me. And the emperor looks at him and he's like, you think you're alive? Because this man's horrible way of living was already death. And so that just, I think it so resonates with people because it's so the opposite of how modern life is set up. People die in hospitals far from our house. Who spends time with old people? We are so segregated, even by age, right? There's been so many medical advancements that death doesn't feel random. It feels like it's something your fault. Like if you eat healthy and you're a good person, obviously you'll live a long time. And on average you will, but that doesn't mean that non-smokers don't get lung cancer all the fucking time, and you can't be one of those people. That doesn't mean that people don't get hit with tree branches, and die, or that doesn't mean that countries don't go to war for no reason and lots of people, life is tragic, and it always has been for all of human history. And so that's definitely, I think, the most powerful one. And it's something I keep on my desk. So I wear this ring, it's like a reminder, but I have, I bought it online. It's a chunk of a tombstone, and it from some, I don't know how this came to be. I hope nobody stole it, but it's from like an old Victorian grave, so a couple hundred years old. And it just has the word dad on it. And that's
so fucking interesting.
Yeah.
Like I want to start asking people what is some weird shit that they have.
Yeah.
That is so interesting, especially knowing your views on death and being a dad recently.
Yeah. And so it's like, look,
crazy.
This guy was a father.
Did you seek out the word dad?
I was looking for something like that, and when I found it, and I was like, That's it. That's the reminder that I want to have all the time.
Fuck, that one really hit me. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
The word dad, that it's an actual tombstone.
Because what you're thinking about is what that person meant to other people.
Yes.
And that this is something clearly people identify. He that was part of his identity, and he's not here. And not only is he not here, I don't even fucking know his name. Right. Nobody does. Not only does nobody know his name, but at some point after his death, even the ground he was buried in, like, suffered an earthquake or somebody stole it. Like, so it's just, there's a humility in that. And I think a reminder to be present, right? Like, let's say I'm working at my desk and I'm writing, and my son, he's almost 3, he comes running and he's like, Dad, look at this. That's like I'm going to get this writing done because I'm important, or it's important to me. But I am not going to ignore this thing. I'm not saying I'm going to quit my work and not focus on it at all, but I am not going to ignore this moment to be this thing that's important to me. Do you know what I mean?
So I have an evolving sense of what my relationship to death should be. So for a very long time, it was patently obvious to me that I was going to die, but that we're living in a period where it is conceivable that we'll be able to hit escape velocity from a health perspective, and that by the time we're 80, 90, if we're able to live that long, that they can add a year and a day to every year that we live or whatever.
Or you just live a lot longer than humans have conceived of life as being.
Correct. So I thought, okay, that's interesting to me because I want to live my life in such a way where my limited amount of time does not impact the size of my dreams. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a denial of death. It was just kind of a cool escape valve for me to, even as I got older, to continue to have big dreams that, sort of by any stretch of the imagination would probably go on beyond me. But because tomorrow was never guaranteed anyway, even when I was 16, that there's only that the sort of false, or maybe a better way to think of it is from an actuarial table standpoint, you're probably going to live long enough for you to have that 40-year dream or that 6-year dream or whatever. So because of that, you have these long-ranging dreams. And I felt like because I had long-ranging dreams, I was able to do some pretty extraordinary things, but only because I was thinking so long-term. So, okay, as I get older, I don't want to stop having these long-term dreams. Yeah. So I really allowed myself to soak in the notion of, hey, you might live forever. So keep having these big long-range dreams. Now, hearing enough people talk about Memento Mori or whatever, I started thinking, all right, people that I really respect are telling me that I need to really think closely about the notion of dying. So I thought, okay, let me really stop and inspect how that would impact me. What does that change in terms of the way that I live, or how I perceive life, or whatever. And so far, I will say, because I'm already, like, it is at the absolute core of my being to only do things that matter, to love deeply, to connect to the people that I love, to not waste time, all of that. Like, I personally don't need that reminder. Yeah. Many people do, and it's very useful for that. That isn't the reminder that I need. I find that it's actually, it feels important to acknowledge the inevitability currently of my death, but at the same time, I find that now I have to fight harder to have long range plans, and I don't like the way that feels.
So it's seemingly there's a contradiction between being present and doing or planning big things. But I'm not sure that there is. I don't know exactly how to solve for it, but let's look at the evidence, right? Marcus Aurelius. Here's a guy who's reminding himself of how ephemeral the emperors who came before him were. He's reminding himself of the inevitability of death. He's saying over and over again the importance of being present, not being driven by anger. We can't say like that this guy didn't accomplish incredible things, right? Like that because of that, he just stayed in bed all day. I think what he's saying is like, let's do the right thing for the right reason. You look at Seneca, same thing, talking over and over again about the death, about the inevitability of death, the meaninglessness of posthumous fame, etc. And yet still sits down and writes these essays that continue to be read by millions of people 2,000 plus years after his death. I think what it's about is about stripping out the low-grade anxiety or denial or whatever we have, and being able to focus everything in that moment. So when Seneca's saying like, you will die, today could be the last day of your life, he's not saying quit what you're doing and go have an orgy or go shoot up heroin just to see what it's like. He's saying live today like a complete day. So like as I worked on Stillness is the Key, it was something I was thinking about a lot. was like, okay, I could die before this book gets published. What happens to me? Does someone finish it? Does it get published? Whatever? Does it sit in a drawer? None of that's really my concern. Nor is it in my control, right? Even if I write in a will, exactly. Nabokov, I think, wrote very clearly, like, destroy my manuscripts after my death.
Really?
Yeah, and lots of authors have done this. And nobody listened. Kafka, same thing. We only know about these works because they would be upset that we know who they are.
Right.
So what do I control? What I do control is, did I do everything I could today, right? Did I is the book complete as of today? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it as complete up until the point I was able to complete it? So I go, the first 2/3 are the book that it could be as of today. That's what I do. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't know that it hits me emotionally. So let's try to unpack that a little bit. So if you're saying like, hey, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to be present, which we actually didn't address and I don't think is a self-evident realization when one thinks about their death, which would be interesting to hear your thoughts around why that is your association. I begin to think about, so if I were writing a book, first of all, I'm such a process writer that I would be the type that's like, bury the fucking manuscript, don't ever let it out. Yeah. People would have they just wouldn't believe how scandalously bad my early drafts of anything are. So I wouldn't think of it in any other way than the following. Did I sincerely pursue making this great today? Yes or no?
That's what I totally agree. That's what it's about. He's saying, like, live every day as a complete day, and then when you wake up tomorrow, you're grateful.
I hope you like this video. I hope you subscribe. But what I really want you to subscribe to is our daily Stoic email. 1 bit of Stoic wisdom, totally for free, to the largest community of Stoics ever in existence. You can sign up at dailystoic.com/email. There's no spam. You can unsubscribe at any time. I love sending it. I've sent it every day for the last 6 years, and I hope to see you there at dailystoic.com/email.